What is up, one and all? Welcome to a new video. My name's SaiTorr, and today I'm going to give you a rundown on the Witcher universe. This is in preparation for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is due out this May, and is looking pretty freaking awesome so far. However, as someone who has played Witcher 1 and 2 backwards and forwards, I can guarantee that The Witcher 3 will heavily rely on its already pre-existing lore and characters from the previous games. Today my job is to fill you in on as much as I can without spoiling too much about the games and not confusing the hell out of you, which will probably happen anyway. To your fortune, I'm going to try not to go too fast and just divulge this universe as best I can. Hopefully by the end of the video, you'll be knowledgeable enough to play The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Let's get started. Believe it or not, the Witcher games are actually based off of a popular series of books written in Poland in the 1990s by Andrzej Sapkowski. The first book was titled The Last Wish and featured a collection of short stories about The Witcher, originally featured in a magazine. The book itself was a dark fantasy heavily inspired by Slavic myth and influenced by Eastern European outlooks, containing lots of underlying themes about society and destiny. The book was then followed by a number of sequels which eventually became a saga, which were huge hits within Poland. Several years later, CD Projekt Red, a sprouting Polish game developer, used Sapkowski's Witcher universe to adapt a sequel to the books with the Witcher video game. As wrong as that could go, the games faithfully follow the universe that Sapkowski created, and even take the story in a new direction than what the books ever intended. The main characters of the books and games, the Witcher himself, is Geralt of Rivia, known to some as the White Wolf, the Butcher of Blaviken, the Sword of Destiny, or Gwynblade by the Elves. Geralt grew up in the Witcher castle known as KAER, and like all Witchers was subjected to a number of experiments that enhanced his natural abilities and allowed him to use signs, which are basically like force powers. Due to the extensive mutations that he underwent, Geralt became more powerful than most Witchers, which also resulted in the white color change in his hair. After years of training as a swordsman, Geralt descended into the Great Continent as a monster slayer for hire. Like Geralt, pretty much all Witchers choose to become monster slayers. In some ways, they're ultimately society's answers to the monsters that normal people can't handle. Most Witchers are actually found as little boys by wandering mages, but years of experimentation and training warp their identity. Because of this, Witchers can't really find their niche in society beyond being a monster hunter. They're not quite human, but they're definitely not like elves and dwarves. But why should that even matter? It matters because one of the key conflicts of the books and games is the divide between humans and non-humans. Humans take up lofty cities and houses and usually subject non-humans such as elves and dwarves to ghettos, giving them no respect or equal treatment. This continued disregard for non-humans has sparked many rebellions in the course of the games and has even led to the foundation of the Scoia'tael, also called the Squirrels, who fight for non-human rights through terroristic means. Heck, Geralt himself was killed while trying to thwart a massacre of the non-human population of Rivia. Ultimately, this was how Sapkowski ended his book series, meaning Geralt stayed dead until the first Witcher game picked back up with the aftermath of his death. More on that later. So, I mentioned a city called Rivia. It's actually one of several regions spread throughout the Witcher's nameless continent that will serve as your open world in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. There are several cities and areas, such as Temeria, where most of the first game takes place, Aedirn, where a lot of the second game takes place, Rivia, Cadwyn, Redania. I could go on. What you really need to know is that most labeled regions in The Witcher, including all the regions I just named, are all parts of the Northern Kingdoms. The North's natural enemy, which lies to the south, is the Nilfgaardian Empire, which is described as being the most powerful empire that ever ruled the earth. They're basically like the Roman Empire, egotistical inside and out, domineering, and highly organized. A year before the end of the books, and 6 years before the start of the first Witcher game, concluded a great war between the Northern Kingdoms and the Nilfgaardian Empire. The war had spanned for years, devastating countless areas of the north and south before finally resulting in a truce that permitted both powers to stay within their respective borders. No more than 6 years after the fighting is Nilfgaard goading the Northern Kingdoms into another war. This is a pretty minor spoiler in my opinion, because it relates to events that occur in The Witcher 2, though the fighting you see depicted in trailers for The Witcher 3 is likely the new war between Nilfgaard and the North. Now, we should be up to speed with where the games start off. The Rivian massacre that Geralt is killed in occurs 1 year after the truce between Nilfgaard and the North. This event is known as the Rivian Pogrom. While Geralt is assumed dead, he's supposedly saved by a sorceress and the love of Geralt's life, Yennefer of Vengerberg. Though she dies in the process, the two are revived once again by Ciri, who's a pretty freaking important character we'll go over soon. 5 years later, Geralt is returned to KAER after years of seclusion. However, Geralt's return is met with a severe memory loss. Geralt has no memory of events that occurred in his life before death, meaning he has completely forgotten his relationship he had with Yennefer. The only semblance of memory that Geralt retains is via flashbacks, and despite the attempts by sorceresses to return his memory, almost all attempts have failed. As you hunt down the mysterious splinter group known as Salamandra in Witcher 1 and the Kingslayer in Witcher 2, Geralt will slowly regain memories of his former life that will ultimately culminate into the plot of The Witcher 3. In The Witcher 3, Geralt will show up on the scene having regained all his memory. His first task of many is to find Yennefer, who mysteriously disappeared sometime within the past 5 years, just like Geralt. Another of his tasks will be to find Ciri, who is basically like Geralt and Yennefer's adopted daughter. Originally born as Cirilla Fiona Ellen Rhiannon, Ciri was to be princess in Cintra, another northern kingdom bordering Nilfgaard, but encountered Geralt several times during tragedies in her early life. Geralt eventually adopted Ciri and had her undergo Witcher training, but spared her of the mutations. After enduring several travesties in which Ciri was pursued by bounty hunters and various kingdoms because of the unnatural power she contained, Ciri used her powers to transport herself to another world and away from the probing eyes of the continent. Before she did so, however, she created a magical island just for Geralt and Yennefer, a place where they could love each other forever. This occurred after the deaths of Geralt and Yennefer. I hope I'm not confusing anyone. Yet. But alas, on one spotless day on the magical island in the middle of nowhere, the Wild Hunt, a cavalcade of skeletal horsemen who dominate and recruit all in their path, kidnap Yennefer, forcing Geralt to chase after them. Geralt's pursuit through the Northern Kingdoms finally ends when Geralt trades his soul for Yennefer's freedom. From here on, it's unknown what Geralt did with the hunt. It's entirely possible that the remainder of the 5 years in which Geralt was missing were years he spent riding with the hunt, to where the hunt eventually gave his life back to him at the start of The Witcher. In The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, it seems Ciri is back, and this time being pursued by the Wild Hunt. Like I said before, Ciri has special powers given to her through Elder Blood. Those with Elder Blood have the ability to travel between dimensions freely, which is what she did after making the island for Geralt and Yennefer. Why this is so valuable to the Wild Hunt is because the leader of the Wild Hunt is from another dimension. If you're not entirely confused, you're about to be. Yes, in the universe of The Witcher, it's entirely confirmed that there are other dimensions and worlds, of which the only people who can travel between them freely are those with Elder Blood and those with a mystical power called the Gate of the Worlds. The king of the Wild Hunt, a member of a race of elves called the NL, once possessed this power, but lost it. He seeks to travel dimensions once again, and the only way to do that is finding Ciri and, well, you know. But while we're on the topic of other worlds, the world that the events of The Witcher take place in is in the world of the Shade, another race of elves. Geralt, who's to spend the rest of his life in servitude to the Hunt, after turning over his soul, must have found out that they were after Ciri, for whom Geralt loved like a daughter. As a result, Geralt rebelled, probably fought the Hunt, and somehow returned to the living, but with no memory of his identity. This, of course, is where the first Witcher game starts. The Witcher 3 is likely going to be a highly personal adventure. Not only will Geralt be searching for the love of his life, or even the daughter he lost, but also putting an end to the Wild Hunt's rides and letting Ciri finally live in peace. All this amidst a great war between the Nordlings and Nilfgaard. Geralt will surely make some of the hardest choices in his life in this game. The fate of his friends, his involvement in the war, maintaining his neutrality, and fulfilling his ultimate destiny. This is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It will not only be a homecoming for fans of the series, but for fans of Sapkowski's original Witcher mythos. So, before we end off the video, let me do one last sweep of the lore for anyone confused. There's a war between the Northern Kingdoms and Nilfgaard, which ends in a truce. Months after this, Geralt is killed trying to quell a non-human rebellion in Rivia. Yennefer brings him back to life, and the two are retrieved by Ciri. Ciri makes an island for the two before the Wild Hunt shows up and steals Yennefer. Geralt chases them down, hands his soul over to them, and Yennefer is released, but her whereabouts unknown. Geralt rides with the Hunt for a few years before learning that the Hunt is chasing Ciri because she has the power to hop dimensions. Geralt rebels, the Wild Hunt kicks him to the curb, and then he's eventually found by his Witcher brethren to be taken to KAER MORHEN. Shit goes down in the first game, shit goes down in the second game, Geralt gets his memory back, starts looking for Yennefer and Ciri, and is probably going to run to the Wild Hunt, doing so. Woo! I hope you all got that. And that about covers the essentials you'll need to know for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Would you believe that we've only just scratched the surface of the lore in this universe? Any hardcore fans of the series know that I'm leaving a lot out, such as Triss Merigold, Dandelion, Vesemir, the Lodge of Sorceresses, the Order of the Flaming Rose, the Conjunction of the Spheres, Ithleen's Prophecy, and anything that happened in The Witcher 1 and 2. But I'll let you guys learn that on your own or in The Witcher 3. If you want to learn more about this universe, I highly encourage you to play The Witcher 1 and 2 on the PC, to read some of Sapkowski's books that have been translated to English, or to check out the Witcher Wiki. If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up in the comments below, and any fans of the series who are positive I got something wrong, please comment as well, otherwise I'm misleading like a ton of people. But I'm pretty sure I got everything pretty accurate. So that's about it, guys. Thank y'all for watching. Check out my other videos upcoming and prior to, and look out for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on May 19th. It's gonna be a blast for sure. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll be seeing you all later.